The Academy Tyrant targeted a human. The instructor couldn't stop it in time. The solar system was vast and full of different worlds. At the edge of one quiet space sector floated the Galactic Military Academy, a massive training station where the children of the galaxy's most powerful species came to learn how to become soldiers and leaders. Inside its gleaming halls and training grounds, young cadets from dozens of alien civilizations studied together, competed together, and sometimes fought each other. Marcus Venn was different from all the other cadets. He was human, and humans had only recently joined the galactic community. 3 years ago, his species had made first contact with the outer worlds, and 5 years before that, they had barely left their home planet of Earth. Now here he was, walking through the Academy's corridors, wearing the same uniform as the children of ancient empires. Some species had existed for millions of years. Humans had only been in space for a few years. The Academy was a strange place for someone like Marcus. The Vraks were tall, crystalline beings who could read minds and lived on worlds of ice and stone. The Cathari were the most dangerous. They had been genetically engineered long ago by scientists who wanted to create the perfect soldier. They were faster, stronger, and smarter than most other beings. The alien were the aristocrats, descendants of an ancient civilization that had spread across 1,000 worlds and never let anyone forget it. Marcus had dark hair and pale skin. He was taller than average humans, and the Academy had trained him hard. But next to a Cathari warrior, he looked almost fragile. Next to an alien noble, with their elegant features and golden-scaled skin, he looked plain. This was his challenge at the Academy, and he knew it. He had to prove that humans belonged here. The trouble started small. Marcus was sitting in a navigation class, taught by senior instructor Varys, one of the few Vraks teachers at the Academy. Varys was ancient by human standards, over 400 years old. But among her people, she was still young and energetic. She moved like crystalline ice singing in the wind, and when she spoke, her voice carried both wisdom and kindness. The lesson was about plotting courses through asteroid fields. Commander Kesthal, a Cathari cadet who had already earned his rank through combat trials, was explaining his navigation plan to the class. He was tall and muscular, with dark blue skin and eyes that glowed like hot coals. Every movement he made was precise and powerful. He spoke with complete confidence, as if nothing he said could ever be wrong. The vector should be adjusted 7 degrees to account for the gravitational pull, Kesthal said, pointing to the star map floating in the middle of the classroom. This is the path of a champion, the fastest and safest route. Marcus had been studying the problem carefully. He saw something that didn't quite fit. His hand went up slowly. Around him, other cadets shifted in their seats. Humans didn't usually challenge the powerful Cathari. "Yes, cadet?" Instructor Varys asked, looking at Marcus with what might have been hope. "I think the gravity calculations are wrong," Marcus said quietly. His voice was steady, but his heart was beating fast. "The asteroid at position 4 to 7 is larger than the chart shows. If you add its mass, the vector would need to be adjusted 8.3 degrees, not 7. The classroom went silent. Kesthal turned to look at Marcus, and his glowing eyes narrowed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Kesthal smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "The human speaks," he said softly. "How interesting. Perhaps your primitive species has stumbled onto something useful." But when Instructor Varys checked the calculations, Marcus was correct. Kesisthol's plan would have crashed the ship into the asteroid. The commander's face grew dark, darker than his blue skin. He said nothing, but when he looked at Marcus again, there was something dangerous in his gaze, something like hunger. From that moment on, things changed for Marcus. He began getting the hardest assignments. He was placed in zero-gravity combat training with opponents who were significantly stronger. His equipment sometimes malfunctioned during simulations. Once, his oxygen supply was lower than it should have been. Another time, his suit's communication system failed in the middle of a dangerous exercise. Marcus never complained. He worked harder, trained longer, and studied more intensely than any other cadet. He made friends with some of the younger Vraks cadets, and even a few sympathetic aliens who found his determination interesting. but he avoided Kesisthal whenever possible. Instructor Varys began watching Marcus more carefully. She was old enough and wise enough to understand what was happening. She had seen similar patterns before in Academy history, though usually they were handled more quietly. The strong sometimes preyed on the weak, and the Academy's traditions had always allowed for this as part of the selection process. The stronger you were, the higher you climbed. It was how things worked, but Varys had started to wonder if this was really the right way. In her 400 years of life, she had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had seen great powers destroy themselves through their own cruelty. The strongest were not always the wisest, though the Academy taught this lesson every day. One evening, Varys found Marcus alone in the training observation room, reviewing footage of his recent combat exercises. He was studying Kesithal's moves, trying to understand how to defend himself better. "You are studying your enemy," Varys said. Her crystalline voice made soft sounds like wind chimes. Marcus jumped, startled. "Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to learn." "Be careful, young human," Varys said. She moved closer, and Marcus could see his own reflection in her transparent body. Kesthal does not respect caution or humility. He only respects strength. You have made yourself his target, and the Academy's rules will not protect you. That is the way things are here. "Should I apologize?" Marcus asked. "Should I admit he was right?" Varys was silent for a long moment. "That would mean you are a coward. Your kind does not accept cowardice well, do they?" "No," Marcus said. "We don't. Once you show weakness, it never ends." "Then we understand each other," Varys said. "Be aware, Marcus Venn. Your courage is admirable, but courage alone will not save you from a hunter like Kesithal. Not yet." Days turned to weeks. The tension between Marcus and Kesithal grew like a storm, building on a distant horizon. Every cadet in the Academy felt it. There was a question in the air. Would the human break under the pressure, or would something else happen? What would happen when a member of an ancient warrior species decided to really test a human's limits? Marcus did not know the answer, but he knew one thing: he would not run, and he would not give up. He was here to prove that humans belonged in the galaxy. If Kesithal wanted to test him, then Marcus would face that test, no matter what happened. He did not know that the test was coming much sooner than he expected, and that it would nearly cost him his life. The breaking point, the zero-gravity combat chamber, was one of the most dangerous training facilities at the Academy. It was a large sphere, sealed and pressurized, where cadets could practice fighting in the vacuum of space while still being monitored by instructors. Thick windows allowed observers to watch, and emergency procedures could shut down the exercise in seconds if something went truly wrong. Marcus had trained in this chamber many times. He knew the risks, and he had become relatively good at moving and fighting without gravity. His human body was not as naturally adapted to zero gravity as some alien species, but he was creative and intelligent. These were the weapons he used to compensate for his lack of raw strength. On the day everything changed, the exercise was supposed to be a simple combat simulation. Two cadets in full spacesuits would fight each other while floating in the zero-gravity sphere. The goal was to show skill and control, not to hurt your opponent. Instructors monitored everything carefully to make sure nobody was seriously injured. Marcus put on his suit in the preparation room. The suit was sleek and white, with blue trim indicating his human classification. It was lighter than the Cathari suits, but stronger than the basic alien equipment. As he fastened the seals and checked the oxygen levels, his hands were steady. He had done this many times. Then Kesthal walked in. The Cathari commander was already in his suit, a dark blue armor-like uniform that made him look even more dangerous than usual. He did not look at Marcus directly, but when he spoke, his voice was cold. "Today we test the human," he said to nobody in particular. "Today we see if soft flesh can really fight in space." Marcus did not respond. He simply finished his preparations and made his way to the chamber entrance. Behind him, Kesthal followed, and Marcus could feel the weight of the Cathari's presence like a shadow. The chamber door opened, and they floated into the vast empty space. For a moment, there was silence, except for the sound of their breathing in their helmets. Then Instructor Varys's voice came through the communication system. "Combat simulation will now begin. Maintain control. Remember, this is practice. Instructors will stop the simulation if anyone is in serious danger. Begin. Kesthal moved first. He launched himself toward Marcus with the speed of a missile. His training was flawless, his movements perfect. Marcus had expected this kind of attack, and he pushed himself in a different direction, spinning to the side to avoid the impact. For the first minute, they danced around each other. Marcus used his smaller size to move quickly. Kesthal used his strength and training to try to corner him. The other cadets watching through the windows saw a brilliant display of different fighting styles. The Cathari warrior was like a force of nature, while the human was like water, flowing around obstacles. But then something changed. During one of Kesisthal's attacks, Marcus felt a sharp tug on his suit. It was near his shoulder, where the oxygen tube connected to his main pack. He pushed away from the Cathari, spinning to gain distance and check his suit. That was when he saw the damage. One of the seals on his oxygen line had been ripped open. It was not massive, but it was enough. His oxygen was bleeding out slowly into the vacuum. He had perhaps 10 minutes before his oxygen levels became critical. Marcus looked at Kesisthal, and he understood. This was not an accident. Kesisthal had damaged his suit deliberately. The Cathari warrior was floating nearby, his glowing eyes watching Marcus with savage satisfaction. "Instructor," Marcus called out. "My suit has been damaged." But Kesisthal spoke at the same time, his voice calm and smooth. "The human is distracted. He is making mistakes. Watch how he falls apart under real pressure." For a moment there was confusion. Through the windows, the instructors could see that Marcus's suit was damaged, but they also saw Kesisthal's innocent expression. The damage could have happened during the combat. Many suits sustained minor tears. It happened all the time. "Cadet Ven, your suit damage is minor," one of the instructors said. "Return to the exit and we will discuss the exercise." "Kesithal, maintain your distance." But Kesithal did not maintain his distance. Instead, he launched himself at Marcus again, moving with deadly purpose. He moved so fast that even Varys, watching through the window, did not have time to react. By the time she understood what was happening, Kesithal was already upon Marcus, their suits colliding with bone-breaking force. The impact sent Marcus spinning. His oxygen line tore further. Now his suit was opening up to the cold vacuum of space. The temperature inside his suit began to drop rapidly. He could see his breath freezing in his helmet. Kesithal came at him again, moving in for what looked like it would be the killing blow. This was not practice anymore. This was something far more dangerous. Varys began running toward the control panel, but Kesithal, with the reflexes of a genetically engineered warrior, had already locked down the chamber's exit doors. Nobody could get in quickly enough to help. Marcus knew he was going to die. The oxygen in his lungs would be gone in minutes. The cold was already making his fingers numb. He was alone in a vast sphere of nothing, facing a creature that had been built to be a killer. But then something unexpected happened, something that would change the course of his life and the history of the entire academy. Marcus's human body, sensing extreme danger and insufficient oxygen, activated an ancient survival mechanism that even human scientists did not fully understand. It was something left over from when humans were prey animals on Earth, when they dove deep into cold waters to escape predators. His metabolism slowed dramatically. His heart rate dropped. His breathing became shallow, almost invisible. His body was shutting itself down. It was entering a state between death and sleep, a hibernation mode that humans could survive in for short periods. This adaptation had helped his ancestors survive the worst conditions on Earth. Now it was saving his life. Kesithal was expecting a victim who would struggle and panic. Instead, he saw Marcus's body go limp. The human's movements stopped. His breathing became impossible to detect. To Kesithal, it looked like the human was dead. The Cathari warrior paused, confused. A dead enemy was not as satisfying as defeating a living one, but still, the human was finally gone. Kesithal unlocked the chamber doors and began to float toward the exit, confident in his victory. He did not notice that Marcus's suit had automatically activated its emergency protocols, creating a small pocket of protected atmosphere around the human's core. He did not see that Marcus was still alive, barely, waiting in his nearly death state. Varys and the other instructors rushed in immediately. They found Marcus floating limp in the chamber, his suit damaged, his oxygen depleted, his body cold. For one terrible moment, they thought he was gone. But Varys, with her 400 years of experience and her ability to sense living things, felt something. Deep inside Marcus's body, far below conscious awareness, a heartbeat still existed. They rushed him to the medical chamber and began emergency procedures. Slowly, very slowly, Marcus's body warmed up. His metabolism began to speed up again. His breathing deepened. His eyes fluttered. He was alive. The question now was not whether Marcus would survive. The question was what would happen next. Kesethal had attempted to murder a fellow cadet, and this time, there was no way to hide it. Everything had been recorded. Every camera in the training chamber had captured exactly what happened. The academy would never be the same again. The system on trial. Marcus woke up in a white medical chamber. His body ached, especially his chest and his lungs. Everything felt heavy and fragile. When he tried to sit up, a soft alarm sounded, and instantly, a medical robot appeared at his bedside. The robot was sleek and efficient, with multiple arms and a calm voice that sounded like it belonged to nobody and everybody. "Cadet Ven, please remain still," the robot said. "Your body has suffered severe cold trauma and oxygen deprivation. Recovery will take time." "How long?" Marcus asked. His voice was rough, like he had not spoken in days. "You have been unconscious for 36 hours, the robot replied. "This is normal for humans after such trauma. Your species has remarkable survival capabilities." Remarkable, indeed. Marcus lay back and stared at the ceiling. He was alive. Somehow, against all odds, he was alive. But he knew that his survival would cause problems. Kesethal had tried to kill him. That was not an accident, not an incident, not a training mishap. It was attempted murder. The next morning, Instructor Varys came to see him. The crystalline Vrax moved gracefully through the medical chamber, her transparent body catching the light in beautiful patterns. Her expression was troubled. "You are healing well," Varys said. She did not smile. "The medical team is surprised at how quickly your human body has recovered. Your species has many gifts." "Where is Kesethal?" Marcus asked immediately. He needed to know. "He has been placed in detention," Varys said. "Pending investigation by the Academy Council. There is much debate happening above us." Marcus Ven. "Much political pressure and angry words." "What kind of debate?" Marcus felt cold despite the warmth of the medical chamber. "He tried to kill me." "Yes," Varys said. "And no. That is the problem. The training chamber's recordings are clear. Kesethal deliberately damaged your suit. Kesethal deliberately attacked you when you were in danger. But Kesethal's family is very powerful. Very powerful indeed." Over the next week, as Marcus recovered, he learned what was happening in the academy and beyond. The incident had caused an explosion of controversy. Kesethal's family, the highest ranks of the Cathari military, had arrived at the academy with lawyers and political representatives. They argued that the whole situation was a misunderstanding. They claimed that combat training was always dangerous, and that injuries happened all the time. They said that Marcus's suit damage could have been accidental, that all the evidence was circumstantial, and that punishing Kesethal would be unfair to an honorable warrior. The alien representatives agreed with them. The alien nobles had always believed that the old ways were best, that strength determined who deserved to survive, and that pushing young fighters to their limits was part of their education. They saw no problem with Kesethal's actions. In fact, many of them believed that Marcus should have been stronger, but other voices spoke up too. Some younger instructors, including several compassionate Vrax who had worked with Marcus, called for justice. The Academy Council, made up of representatives from all species, was split. What should happen to Kesethal? Should he be expelled, punished, or should the whole incident be forgotten, written off as an unfortunate training accident? 3 days after Marcus woke up, a representative from the Academy Council came to see him. She was an alien named Speaker Mirth, elderly and elegant, with scales that shimmered like polished gold. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes were intelligent and kind. I am told you wish to give a statement about the incident, Speaker Mirth said. It was not a question. Yes, Marcus said. I want to tell the council what happened. Be careful how you speak, Speaker Mirth warned gently. The council is very political. What you say will be analyzed and debated. Some will use your words to support their position, whatever that position might be. Words are weapons in politics. Young human. Then I will speak truth, Marcus said. And let people do what they will with it. The council hearing was held in a large amphitheater. Representatives from a dozen species sat in a semicircle, watching and listening. Marcus sat in the center, still somewhat weak, but determined. Across from him, Kesthal stood in restraints, his glowing eyes fixed on Marcus with hatred. Tell us what happened, said the council chairman, a neutral Vrax elder named Coordinator 7. Marcus began to speak. He described the exercise calmly and clearly. He described how Kesthal had deliberately torn his suit seal. He described the calculated attack. He described the moment he realized he was going to die. He did not speak with anger or emotion. He simply told what had happened, step by step. When Marcus finished, the council began to question him. Some asked sympathetic questions. Others tried to suggest that maybe the damage to his suit had been accidental, that maybe he was mistaken about Kesthal's intentions. But Marcus answered each question with patience and honesty. Then something unexpected happened. Instructor Varys requested to give additional evidence. She presented the training chamber's technical logs. She showed that Kesthal had accessed the chamber's control systems right before the exercise began. She demonstrated that he had the knowledge to predict exactly what would happen if he damaged Marcus's suit in the specific way he had done it. It was not the action of someone making a mistake. It was the action of someone planning a crime. But Varys had something else. She had been investigating Kesthal's past. She had found records of other cadets who had suffered injuries while training with him. Some had recovered. Others had not been so lucky. Some had disappeared from the academy completely. In each case, the incident had been labeled an accident and quickly forgotten. As Varys presented this evidence, a chill spread through the amphitheater. For the first time, the council and everyone watching realized that Kesthal's actions were not an isolated incident. They were part of a pattern. A deadly pattern that had been hidden for years. Kesthal's lawyers began to shout objections. The Cathari military representatives demanded the hearing be stopped, but it was too late. The truth was out. The academy had known, or at least suspected, that Kesthal was dangerous. And the academy had done nothing. In the days that followed, the academy descended into chaos and debate. The council met continuously. Investigations were ordered. Other cadets came forward with stories of bullying and abuse they had suffered from powerful cadets. Other instructors admitted that they had witnessed incidents of violence, but had stayed silent out of fear or tradition. The incident with Marcus had cracked open something dark and hidden inside the academy. It could not be closed back up anymore. Marcus lay in the medical chamber and watched it all happen. He had spoken the truth. He had given evidence. Now, the academy had to decide what to do with that truth. He did not know if Kesthal would be punished severely or lightly. He did not know if the academy's systems would change or stay the same. But he knew one thing for certain. He had survived. And in surviving, he had forced the academy to face itself. The reckoning. The decision came 3 weeks after the hearing. The Academy Council, after intensive debate and investigation, announced its judgment. Kesthal was expelled from the academy immediately. He would face a military tribunal run by the Cathari government itself, a process that would be far more serious than anything the academy could impose. The news spread through the academy like lightning. Many cadets were shocked. The Cathari were the most powerful species in the known galaxy, and they had never allowed anyone to punish one of their own so severely. But the evidence was irrefutable, and the Cathari military itself could no longer hide from what Kesthal had done. What came next surprised everyone even more. The Cathari military launched an official investigation into their own society. They discovered that Kesthal was not unique. There had been others like him throughout Cathari military history, powerful warriors who had used their strength to hurt the weaker and had never been held accountable. The investigation revealed decades of covered-up crimes, of families protecting killers, of victims silenced by money or fear. The scandal became galactic news. Every species heard about what had happened at the Academy. The story of a human cadet who had stood up against a Cathari warrior, of an instructor brave enough to speak truth despite political pressure, and of an institution finally forced to face its own corruption. These stories captured the imagination of billions. Marcus became famous. News organizations interviewed him. Other humans on other worlds watched with pride as a member of their species showed courage and intelligence. Some of the older, more traditional species grumbled about change and loss of tradition, but many younger aliens were inspired. If humans could challenge the system, perhaps they could too. The changes at the Academy came swiftly. New oversight committees were established. A proper investigation was launched into all past incidents and injuries. Any trainer or instructor who had hidden crimes was questioned. Some resigned quietly. Others were removed from their positions. The Academy began to implement new safety protocols and fairness procedures that had never existed before. But the changes came at a cost to Marcus. He was not hated exactly, but he was not welcomed by many powerful families either. The alien aristocrats viewed him as a troublemaker who had disrupted the proper order of things. Some Cathari cadets, whose families had been dishonored by Kesisthal's exposure, avoided him or glared at him in the corridors. Even some of the Vraks, who generally supported justice, worried that Marcus had gone too far, that changing traditions could lead to weakness. Only a small group of cadets and instructors truly supported him. These were the younger, more idealistic members of their species. They gathered around Marcus like he was a symbol of something new and different. They believed that the Academy could change, that fairness was more important than tradition, and that the strongest were not necessarily the best. Instructor Varys was vindicated and promoted. She was given more authority over the Academy's safety procedures. Her actions had shown courage and moral clarity, and now younger instructors looked to her as a model of what an educator should be. She had risked her career to do what was right, and the Academy had finally recognized this. When Varys visited Marcus in his room after his full recovery, they talked about what had happened. The Cathari Military Tribunal has scheduled Kesthal's trial, Varys said. He will be tried for negligence, for assault, and for attempting to cause the death of a fellow cadet. His family is still trying to minimize the charges, but the evidence is overwhelming. He will likely spend many cycles in a Cathari detention facility. What about the other cadets he hurt? Marcus asked. The ones from before? Some of their families are coming forward now, Varys said. With Kesthal exposed, they no longer fear speaking. The military tribunal will have much work to do. This single incident has opened doors that have been locked for a very long time. Marcus thought about this. He had not intended to change the entire academy when he corrected Kesthal in that navigation class. He had simply been trying to do well in his studies. But one small action had led to another, and then another, until an entire system had been forced to face itself. Do you think I did the right thing? Marcus asked. Bringing all of this to the council? Varys was silent for a moment. Her crystalline form caught the light in beautiful patterns. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. When I was young, very young by Vrak standards, I believed that the strong were meant to rule, and the weak were meant to obey. This was what my teachers told me. This was what the galaxy seemed to show me every day. But as I grew older and wiser, I came to understand something different. Strength is not the only thing that matters. Justice matters. Compassion matters. The courage to say this is wrong even when it is dangerous matters. She moved closer to Marcus. You did something very difficult. You spoke truth when it would have been safer to stay silent. You did not try to defeat Kesthal through violence or combat. You used your mind, and your words, and your honesty. This is not the Cathari way. This is not the alien way. But perhaps it is the human way. And perhaps the galaxy needs a new way. 3 months after the incident, Kesisthal's trial was held. The tribunal found him guilty of assault and negligence. He was sentenced to 10 years in a high-security detention facility, a punishment that shocked many in the traditional military establishment. A Cathari warrior, imprisoned for so long, was almost unknown. But the tribunal's judgment was firm. Justice was being served, and even the powerful had to face consequences. Back at the academy, life began to settle into new patterns. The atmosphere was different now. Bullying and abuse still existed. These things could not be eliminated overnight, but there was now an institutional response. Victims could come forward without fear. Instructors were held accountable. The culture was changing slowly. But it was changing. Marcus became known throughout the academy, not as a famous warrior or brilliant tactical genius, but as the student who had changed everything. Other cadets sought his friendship and his advice. He was elected to the student council. Younger cadets, who had never known the old ways, saw him as a leader and a hero. But Marcus felt the weight of responsibility. He was no longer just a human cadet trying to survive. He was now a symbol of change, and symbols carry expectations. He trained harder than ever. He studied more carefully than anyone else. He made certain that nobody could say he was unworthy of the attention and support he had received. When Kesesthal was transported off the academy station to his detention facility, Marcus watched from a distance. The Cathari warrior was in chains, his head held high despite his imprisonment. For a moment, Kesesthal's glowing eyes met Marcus's. The hatred was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Recognition, perhaps. The recognition that this human had defeated him, not with strength, but with something more powerful. As the transport ship rose into the sky and disappeared toward the Cathari homeworlds, Marcus understood that this was not the end of his story. It was only the beginning. The academy had changed because of what he had done, but the galaxy was vast and full of other places where similar injustices were hidden. His work was far from finished. Humanity's legacy. The graduation ceremony at the Galactic Military Academy was always an impressive event. Thousands of cadets from a dozen species stood in their dress uniforms, arranged by their achievement levels and class rankings. Above them hung the banners of their home worlds, their colors and symbols representing the vast diversity of the galaxy's civilizations. This year, the ceremony held special significance. Marcus stood at the front of the graduating class. He had earned the rank of top cadet through academic excellence, practical skill, and moral leadership. Not through dominance or combat prowess, but through intelligence, determination, and the respect he had earned from instructors and fellow students alike. As the ceremony began, the Academy Council presented awards and commendations. The traditional military honors went to the strongest cadets, the fastest fighters, and the most brilliant tactical minds. But then something new was introduced. The Academy Council announced a new award, created specifically for this year. It was called the Medal of Institutional Courage, given to the individual who had shown the greatest bravery in standing against injustice, regardless of personal risk. The medal was given to Instructor Varys. When she stepped forward to accept it, the entire amphitheater erupted in applause. The old Vrax instructor's transparent form seemed to glow with pride and emotion. She had risked everything to speak truth, and now that truth was being honored. Young instructors throughout the academy had already begun to follow her example, prioritizing justice over tradition, safety over maintaining the old systems. But the most significant moment came when Marcus delivered the graduation address. He had been asked to speak by the Academy Council, a profound honor that still seemed strange to him. Here he was, a human barely out of his teenage years, speaking to thousands of the galaxy's most powerful beings about the future. Marcus stood at the platform and looked out at the sea of faces. Crystalline Vrax, with their deep, ancient wisdom. Blue-skinned Cathari cadets, some of them still processing the disgrace their species had suffered. Golden aliens with their proud bearing. Representatives of 100 other species, each one watching him with varying degrees of interest or skepticism. When I arrived at this academy, Marcus began, his voice steady and clear, I was the youngest species in the known galaxy, trying to learn from the oldest. Everything I did was under observation. Every mistake I made was noticed. Every success was called luck or accident. I was supposed to be weak. I was supposed to fail. He paused, letting his words settle. Some of you wanted me to fail. You believed that humans did not belong here, that we had not earned the right to stand alongside the great civilizations of the galaxy. I understand that belief. My species had barely left our home world. We had no ancient history, no millions of years of wisdom. We had only our determination to grow and learn. Marcus's eyes swept across the crowd. He was not being defensive. He was simply stating facts. But I also learned something during my time here. I learned that the oldest civilizations are not always the wisest. I learned that strength without justice becomes tyranny. I learned that tradition, while valuable, can sometimes hide terrible wrongs. And I learned that change is not weakness. Change is growth. The amphitheater was completely silent now. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. Everyone listened. I nearly died in this academy, Marcus said simply. I was attacked by another cadet whose family was powerful and whose species was feared. I was supposed to disappear quietly, written off as a training casualty. Nobody would have questioned it. The academy has dealt with such incidents before, always quietly, always with the guilty parties protected by family or rank. But something different happened this time. An instructor chose justice over comfort. Cadets chose truth over tradition. And an entire institution was forced to look at itself honestly. I did not do this alone. Many of you helped, whether you realized it at the time or not. Marcus looked directly at some of the younger alien and Vrax cadets in the crowd, the ones who had stood with him. My species likes to say that we are defined by the choices we make. We are a young species, still figuring out who we are and what we stand for. Some humans became explorers, seeking knowledge in distant stars. Some became scientists, understanding the mysteries of the universe. Some became warriors, defending our worlds and our people. But I came to this academy to become something else. I came to represent the idea that justice matters, that fairness matters, that no being, no matter how strong or ancient or powerful, is above the law. He raised his voice slightly, and it carried through the entire amphitheater. I am graduating from this academy today. In a few weeks, I will be assigned to my first deep space mission. I will serve the galactic community and hopefully bring honor to my species. But my real work is just beginning, because this academy is only one place. There are thousands of other institutions, millions of worlds, where similar injustices hide in darkness. Change in one place is wonderful. Change across the galaxy is what we must achieve. To my fellow graduating cadets, Marcus continued, I ask you to consider what you have learned here. Not just the tactical knowledge or the military skills, but the bigger lessons about who we are and who we want to be. Each of you has the power to change your corner of the galaxy. Each of you can stand against injustice. Each of you can be brave enough to speak truth even when it is unpopular. And to the younger cadets still at this academy, Marcus said, know that the rules have changed. The old ways are not the only ways. You do not have to accept abuse. You do not have to believe that the strong have the right to dominate the weak. You can demand better. And you have the institution's support to do it. When Marcus finished speaking, the applause started slowly. Then it grew. It swelled, until it seemed like the entire amphitheater was shaking, with the sound of thousands of beings expressing approval. Some of the traditional military officers in the crowd remained silent, but most stood and clapped. The younger generation was definitely with him. 3 weeks later, Marcus received his assignment. He would serve as a junior officer on the diplomatic corps vessel called the Horizon. The Horizon was a new ship, built to promote cultural exchange and peaceful negotiation between species. It was not the assignment of a warrior, but an assignment that suited Marcus perfectly. His strength, the Academy Council had recognized, was not in combat but in understanding and communication. On his last day at the Academy, Marcus visited Instructor Varys in her office. The crystalline Vrax was working at her desk, reviewing reports on the Academy's new safety protocols. She looked up when he entered, and something like pride crossed her ancient face. You are leaving us, she said. It was not a question. Yes, Marcus said. But the Academy will always be part of me. You will always be important to me, Instructor. You took a risk for me when you had no obligation to do so. I did what was right, Varys said simply. That is all any being can do. I am old, Marcus Venn. I have perhaps another 100 years,